Welcome at Mindful Elevation Caribbean discussion. We are back with our discussions where we bring in information, where we're going to discuss and where we're sharing all type of experiences, especially related to mental health, mental well-being, and everything related to it. Our goal is to especially take away the shame, make it more and more normal to talk about this topic, to show that you're not the only one going through the challenges and that we all are here to share with each other and to learn from each other. So today we're going to talk about Ikigai. So I got this book from or my partner in crime suggested for me to read this book, and it's the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. And from the moment that I started reading it, I already had to okay, I want to be discussing this book and especially the philosophy behind it with you, for me to share. There is different ways of us for us to work on our body, mind, soul, spirit. So hence the reason that we are here, and it's definitely an interesting book. So if whenever you have a time you want to read it, you can do so, and it gives you advice, it gives you tip how you can go through about life, how you can enjoy it, how you can stop worrying. But before I go and continue talking all about ikigai and everything, and spoil what we're going to talk about. I have for tonight, I have Mr. Don Gleason, and he leverages his passion to help people find the care that energizes them and help them live their, fulfill their life. So, but we give him the chance to talk a little bit more about him itself. So let me start. Don, how are you doing? Good evening.
Good evening. It's great to be with you today. I'm really enjoying this and look forward to our discussion today. This is going to be really good. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here and talk about something that I'm studying. I'm certainly not an expert in it, but I'm studying and learning and applying it into my business. As you said, helping people find the career that
Mhm.
energizes them and the life that fulfills them. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, yes, I am not an expert in it neither, but
Mhm.
indeed, like you said, we all trying, or both of us trying to use it in our business. And I found it still interesting, even though I'm not an expert, to still share what
Mhm.
we implement, what we know about it, to um, give people also an incentive to go and read a different way of handling challenges. So
Exactly.
before we continue, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, you bet. So I'm that guy who in fifth grade knew what he wanted to do in his life. That was 1970 in April. It was the first Earth Day in the United States. And we were talking about the environmental and sustainability. And that was the time in America where we were starting to get rid of lead in the gas. And we were starting to take notice of all the things we'd polluted in the water. And my dad used to take us out fishing. And I could see the yellow foam on the lakes and the rivers. And you could smell the stench. And it's like, ooh, you don't even want to go up to the water. You certainly didn't want to eat any fish out of it, but you could see dead fish on the water. And I started thinking, what is going on? What are we doing in America today, polluting our water? So I started getting interested in it. And I was really good at math and science. This is going to come back kind of an ikigai. I was really good at math and science, and I started studying through high school and into college, got my bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. But in 1982, there was a recession in the US. I was part of the 85% of my graduating college class that did not have a job after 4 months. So I joined
Mhm.
the Air Force and got 20. I was going to do 4 years, just 4 years, period, no more. I stayed for 27 because I absolutely loved the things I got to do. And when I transitioned out of the service in 2009, retired, so to speak, right into my second career, I really had a great transition. But I spent a lot of time really figuring out what it is I wanted to do, paying attention to the emotions and the passions and the skills. And I think that's why Ikigai relates so much to me because there's a direct connection. But I had a job with a management consulting firm, Booz Allen Hamilton, for 9 years. On average, military getting out of the service, they change jobs at the rate of 45% in the first 12 months, 65% change in the first 24 months. I spent 9 years with the same company. So I obviously found something that I was really happy with. Either that or I just didn't want to complain. I don't know what it was, right? But I found something I think that I really enjoyed and really meant something to me. It was kind of like you just said, right? Ikigai, what makes a life worth living? And we'll talk more about that. But that's me. So I'm right now trying to help others find that job that really focuses in on what they want to do, what energizes them, like I said, what fulfills them. Because too often there's too many people that are in a job, they feel stuck, they're not enjoying it. I just saw an article on TV a couple weeks ago about the Sunday scaries. On Sunday afternoon and evening, the blood pressure starts rising and the stress is increasing because they're thinking about going to work on Monday and they don't want to go. They don't enjoy the job, or they don't enjoy the leadership. They don't enjoy the company. Something is saying, I don't want to be there. It's like, why are we doing that to ourselves? We should look forward to it. We should be excited about the opportunity to go back and do something. So I want to help people find that thing that they really enjoy, so they're energized, so that the day just whips by. They go home excited. Not They can't wait to come back the next day, but they're so excited they can't wait to tell people at home, to interact with their spouse, to interact with their kids. They got energy and excitement, that fulfilled life, versus going home, plopping in front of the TV, pulling out a can of beer and watching some stupid show, right? And falling asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. So that's about me. That's what I'm excited about doing. And that's where it comes from, is that transition I had in 2009 and that desire for others to have the same thing I had.
That's good to hear. And I had to smile when you said about the Sunday, the pressure going up, the stress going up, because you have to go to a job, or you're complaining that the weekend went so fast, you already have to go back to the job. So yes, and especially now after everything that has been going on around in the world, it's like the stress level is higher, or people getting in stress faster than before the COVID and everything. So yes, it's really something that we have to work on.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's important that, since you just brought that up, COVID, right? So many people with the businesses shut down, the government shut down, they started to operate at home, and they really started to understand a little bit more about what was important to them in their life.
Mhm.
And I live in San Antonio, Texas, and when I was working downtown, it was a 35-minute drive on a good day. When I came home at 4:30, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, it could be an hour and 20 minutes,
Mhm.
right? So you started thinking, I'm going to spend an hour to 2 hours on the road every day to get to and from work. Now, I would usually have phone calls and I would do podcasts and I would listen to things. But
Mhm.
if you're not, it's kind of just wasted time, and it's time away from your family. So many people found that piece of, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to change jobs so I don't have to do that anymore. And it
Mhm.
became kind of that tipping point. So you talked earlier about mental health. I thought that was really good, from us figuring out, mental health wise, what are the priorities? And too often, go back to that again. We get the job, we get a good paycheck, we feel trapped, we feel like we have to drive downtown to be San Antonio, we have to drive to that job. We don't have any options, and we start to regret it. Sunday scaries, probably a bunch of other names. So being able to have that now, choice was a good thing, but I'm also a DISC consultant, DISC personality assessment. And so many people require internally themselves to interact with people. And when you just sit at home all day, you're on the computer, you jump on a Zoom call, you may not even have your camera on, you may not even be participating, you're just listening,
Mhm.
and you get off, you're not getting that interaction. And it's
Correct.
so important that we understand ourselves, what we need. And I think, we're in that pendulum piece a little bit of the post-pandemic period, of
Mhm.
figuring out, hey, yeah, it was great not to be at work and have to drive, but I'm missing something. I'm missing that interaction, and I've got to have something back, which I think is why hybrid is so cool. So
Yeah.
I had a job for 9 years with Booz Allen that I could do the hybrid piece. And when my bosses weren't there and my peers weren't there, why would I go to work? So I'm going to go down there and sit in the office all day long and I'll be on the phone. I can do that at home. Avoid the 2 hours of driving, walk over and get a soda, get a drink, whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
just work and get my job
Yeah,
done. So people got
correct.
to. It's about self awareness. We're going to talk more about that, but that's a teaser. It's about self awareness as we go through Ikigai.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So before we go continue into nitty gritty of
Hmm.
talk first about what Ikigai is.
Yeah, as you said, it's that it's that thing about life makes what makes life worth living. There was pieces where we talked about happiness. And people have always been trying to strive for happiness. You go back in the 70s and 80s, think about the hippies, think about the search for meaning. We've always been trying to search for what is it that makes us happy? What is it that energizes us? And there's so much variability across the different countries, across the different cultures. So Japan was facing that at that time. And they said, how can we come up with something to help people really kind of figure out happiness?
Mm-hmm.
Or as they described it, a life worth living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which goes back to everything we were just talking about, to
Yes.
not to
Mm-hmm.
not feel trapped, to be mentally healthy. Because when you think about the mental health impacts to our physical life, to our mental health, to those around us, it can. I think it leads into divorce. It could lead into the kids' problems that we have today with, parents aren't there, so they go out and they get in gangs. Kids are looking for that interaction. You can
Mm-hmm.
find it with sports and be part of a team, or you can find it with a gang and be part of a team,
Yeah.
right? But you're
Mm-hmm.
getting that interaction. So we as humans need that interaction. So this was a theory that was pushed forward in the Japanese, to help people to find that life worth living, and it has 4 parts. We'll go into that, but it has 4 parts that kind of help you figure out some of those things. And but is there defining happiness?
Yeah. And that is very important, like you're saying, even though, well, maybe not even though, um we want happiness,
Hmm.
and when we have to work for it, or when we have it, we kind of like do not want to kind of like believe that we are happy, or we
Hmm.
want happiness in the bigger things, and while we forgetting that actually it starts in the little things, that you
Hmm.
have to start finding happiness in that, something that puts a smile on your face. So
Hmm.
yeah, we want it,
Oh,
but
yeah.
most of the time
I posted on LinkedIn this morning about culture shock.
hmm
And when people go, they either travel to a new area or they relocate to a new area. The culture's different, right? The language is different. You go to the Northeast United States, you have a whole different language than the Southeast, and certainly than the Midwest. Every area has their own food they like, the candy they
hmm
like. There's so many different things that are different. You go to a whole new country, and now you've got drastic differences. We
yeah.
were talking in the green room before you started. I think it was that you get overseas, and it's a whole different look on stress.
hmm
We'll get to it. We'll get to it tomorrow if we have to. But in
Yes.
America, it's like, no, 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 you got to have it done today. And we force people to stay till 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night to try to get something done that really probably
hmm
didn't need to be done, but somebody just wanted it done.
yeah.
So when I posted this morning, it's about your attitude. I had a senior NCO one time when I was in Germany the first time, and she never left the base, but one weekend she took her kids on a trip, and she went over from Bitburg, Germany, on the far west by Luxembourg, and she went over by
hmm
Frankfurt, spent the night, came back around, and on Monday morning she was just as mad as anything. I said, "What's going on?" She says, "Oh, these Germans, man, they don't understand life. They don't know how to do things. They don't communicate right. The stores weren't open. The gas stations weren't available." I'm like, "But that's their culture. Except on one Saturday a month, they close at noon on Saturday. All the stores, grocery stores and everything. You can buy some food at certain gas stations on the Autobahn. Maybe in the city there's a gas station, but they just kind of close down for the
Yeah.
weekends."
hmm
And it's so different than America, where it's 24/7. She wanted it to be just like America. And I said, "But they're not. They're different." And she's like, "Well, they're wrong." I said, "No, they're Germans.
Yeah.
That's their culture. So
Mm-hmm.
I always took it as a very interesting perspective to come into another culture, to learn about the culture, to get involved in theirs, try to adapt some of their, whether it be the language. I try to speak the language where I could. We
Mm-hmm.
went to Estonia in April of
Mm-hmm.
2022 for about 6 days with my daughter and my wife, the three of
Mm-hmm.
us. And we were practicing words and sentences on the way over. We were thinking about the culture, the type of foods we're going to eat. We were excited
Yeah.
versus that feeling of, it's not America, I don't want to go. Guess what? My senior NCO never left the base again for the next 2 years. She was there.
Mm,
It's like, oh, that's the whole fun of being in Germany.
yeah.
So anyway, it is about happiness, but it is about perspective and
Yes.
attitude as well. So I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
share that
Correct.
story.
Yes. And Bakari saying that sometimes we do not believe we deserve to be happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, isn't
That
that a
is,
shame?
yeah, that is so true. And we keep on sabotaging ourselves as well.
Mhm.
So we
Yeah.
having, yeah.
Yeah, my daughter, we were talking lately about therapy and how more people need to go through therapy, because you think about, well, what's the toughest job that you have in life that you never get training for? Being a parent, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to have kids because they don't know how to raise kids. But most of us don't know how to raise them until we get there. We do the best we can. We struggle through it. We watch and we observe, but we all make mistakes, and that
Mm-hmm.
has implications on the kids, right? Things we say, the stress, you know, the direction versus letting them
Mm-hmm.
create. There's so many different pieces that that, that get ingrained in their head by age 7.
Mm-hmm.
They say that that's when most of your beliefs are in your subconscious mind, is by age 7. So now you deal with that the rest of your life. So everything that she was just talking about is, that fear and the resistance and
Mm-hmm.
those things that impact how we do certain
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So that's a great statement. Thanks for sharing that.
You are indeed. And you now that you're mentioning about going to therapy,
Hmm.
I think we as human being, we kind of like getting more and more close up to, at least in the
Hmm.
Caribbean then, where we don't like to be talking about whatever is going on. We prefer to keep it inside. And then at the same hand, or at the same time, we would not want to have any challenge or any problem bothering us. So
Hmm.
but then we're forgetting that sometimes we need a little help to bring us to where we want to be.
Yep.
And
And they say the whole social media, the iPhone, whether the personal digital assistant, right? Whether it be the iPhone or
Mhm.
the Google phone or whatever, has really, we share so much about our best, and we never share about our struggles and our pains, which
Yeah.
which is why this last month, on the first week, I've
Mm-hmm.
got skin cancer, and the doc in April took a couple biopsies, and then
Mm-hmm.
he said, I want you to do this chemical ointment treatment on your entire head. I want you to shave your head. I want it to be
Mm-hmm.
entire from almost from the shoulders up. And I don't know if
Okay.
you've done this, but it's painful. It reaches inside your skin and it pulls
Mm-hmm.
blisters. And pretty soon you're bleeding, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got, it's like your face is starting to peel off. And
Okay.
so I started that, and then at the same time
Mm-hmm.
he said, well, you got 2 spots on your one on the almost on the shin of each leg. So he ended
Mm-hmm.
up taking a spot about almost a half a dollar size, US half dollar. And it's been 5 weeks today, 5 weeks
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, and I'm still working to close those off so that I can go swimming or whatever in the summer. I can't do that yet. Um,
Okay.
but the whole piece of, now I forgot where we're going, but the whole piece of how we approach that situation, it is what it is. I've got skin
Mm-hmm.
cancer. I've got to go through this. It's painful. But what I did is I jumped on social media the very first night. I said, okay, I've shaved my head. I'm about ready to start this routine, and I'm going to document it. And then when I got to my worst, I put a picture on there. I mean, I was bright red, like a huge sunburn, and people could see the pain and the blisters
Mm-hmm.
down here in my neck. And I was sharing it. And I had more people jump on and say, thanks for sharing that, because, I'm going through something like that. Maybe not skin cancer, but another type of cancer. And we
Mm-hmm.
started communicating about that. So it was neat to see how we were sharing about pains. And then as I went through with the leg surgery, we were going to go to Maine. It's a 2,000-mile trip. We're flying up for
Mm-hmm.
Memorial Day weekend, end of May. And a friend of mine, 34 years, had died from cancer back in March. So we were doing the funeral up there with his family.
Sorry to
It's where
hear
he
that.
grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. And so I was worried about how my legs were gonna go through that, because the Friday
Mm-hmm.
before, the doc said, stop walking 250 steps every hour. Just put your butt on the couch and relax. Don't let your legs
Mm-hmm.
swell up. So I actually did pretty good on the trip, but I shared some pictures from the airport, as I was trying to wander, and I was actually sitting as I was waiting for the plane,
Mm-hmm.
sitting sitting in the main where people are walking. I'm sitting
Yeah.
there
Mm-hmm.
because there was no other place to sit, and I just had to get my legs elevated. So I was sharing my pain, and we don't do that. We're
No.
resistant to do that. So I think
Mm-hmm.
this is
Yeah.
I'm full of stories. Sorry.
That's okay. And that's one of the things that I like that they talk about a lot in Ikigai too, is the community, that you
Mhm.
have a group around you that you either do things together or you share, and it makes, let me call it, the burden a little
Mhm.
less,
Yeah,
because then it's not only you don't think that it's only you, but you have a group around you to support you, maybe going through the same thing. So yes,
yeah,
it's
yeah. Have we ever been at work where we have a bad boss and everybody comes together and they're talking about their troubles with the boss, but they feel better because they've got a group of people that they're kind of
exactly,
talking about it and trying to figure out the solution to the problem. Yeah,
yes,
we need
yeah,
to talk about those
yes,
challenges.
exactly. You
Mhm.
feel lighter one time.
That's right. That's right. Now, hopefully, you don't make a bad decision and try to kill the guy or something. But
No, no, exactly. No,
yeah,
no, no, no,
I was
not
watching.
not
I
to
was
go in that
watching.
direction.
Yeah, I was watching Band of Brothers, which is about getting ready for the Normandy invasion. I was watching it
Mm-hmm.
last night, and six NCOs got together and said they got to get rid of this captain,
Mm-hmm.
and they were making bad decisions at that point. They all suffered for it, but at least the
Yeah,
captain did not get killed.
that's a good
Yeah.
thing. Hey,
So.
that's the, yeah, that's the thing too, the consequences. So you have
Mhm,
to indeed realize that whatever you do has consequences as well.
mhm.
So it can be
That's right.
positive or can be negative. Yeah. So
That's right. Yeah.
based on what decision. So um okay, so if we go kind of like back to the ikigai thing, because
Mhm,
you said something about what makes life worth living.
mhm.
So tell us a little bit more in your, let me call it, in your opinion.
Okay. And I think that's where I come to that piece of being energized. When you are in a job that you don't have that Sunday scaries, where you're looking forward to Monday morning. You wake up, you're excited. I get to go to work. I get to work on these projects. You get to work and boom, you just jump right in. It's not, oh, let me see if I can go get a cup of coffee. Let me see if I could, go get lunch somewhere, a muffin. Let me go talk to this guy. You find all these different ways to avoid the work. Instead, you
Mhm.
actually are so excited, you jump at your desk and you start working on that project, or you go coordinate with somebody to work on that project, right? You can't wait to solve those problems. And pretty soon you're thinking, oh, it must be 10 o'clock now for the coffee break, right? And all of a sudden you realize, no, it's 12 o'clock. I'm late for lunch. Or maybe I missed lunch. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And
Yeah.
you've been so excited, you just lost track of time. You know, and at the end of the day, you're excited, as I said earlier. If you could find a job like that, that's that piece that makes life worth living to me, because you're doing something you're good at, you're doing something you love, it making a difference, and you're getting paid for it. And those are the four circles. We can talk deeper on each one of those, but those are the four circles of Ikigai. But
Yeah.
it brings that. I always want to focus on the feeling, because that brings that excitement of what you're doing and the results you're bringing into play. So it's not just making a paycheck. I think I work with a lot of U.S. military getting out of the service, and they
Mm-hmm.
immediately start thinking, contractors make a lot of money. I'm going to go get a contract job and get rich. Well, they don't make as much as you think they make, right? The company makes a fair amount of money. The leaders make a fair amount of money, but not the
Mm-hmm.
workers. You know,
Yeah.
so just searching for the high paycheck isn't always good, and it comes
No,
usually with
correct.
a lot of travel or a lot of hours. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to do that kind of stuff, do it with something you love. I was talking to a guy in a plane one night. I've been traveling every week for 3 years, so I got platinum level on American Airlines. So now I'm just pretty much upgraded to business class every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there, so I'm sitting there thinking, I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm getting tired of this every week. I'm sitting next to a guy who's been doing it for 7 years. He flies out every Monday morning and comes back every Friday night. I'm like, how do you do this? He says, 'cause I absolutely love what I'm doing. I get to meet with these people and the clients. I get to sell this product. We're making money for the company. I'm getting bonuses, but I really enjoy the work. So it's like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's the kind of thing you want, is that happiness piece.
Yeah.
So that for him, that was a life worth living.
Yeah, correct. Um, People listening might be thinking that yes, okay, but it's so easy talking that you have to love your job. You have to find happiness in your job. You have to be able to wake up on Monday morning and yes, I
Mhm.
want to go to the job. It sounds kind of like easy, and I
It's not
mean,
easy.
I'm not going to lie. I do love my job. I love the part because I does work at the school with the students. So I
Mhm.
love that part. So I find happiness in that. I
There you go.
do wake up every day that I want to go to my work. But then if I have to look at the things around it, the other parts of the job, that kind of like I do not like so much. So it kind of like also comes
Mhm.
back to, even if it is one part of your job that you like, you can still, how you call it, make that your day, make that makes you wake up. Because I can imagine that not everybody is able to find everything that they have to do in a job that they might find it
Mhm.
worth living for, or they might
Mhm.
find that good, nice to do. So, and we have to
Yeah.
understand, because especially here on the island, it's not easy for you to go say neither of, okay, I don't like this job, let me go and look for another job. Because if you have to be honest, jobs are not, depending on which area you're working for or in,
Mhm.
jobs are not there to pick and really choose.
Mhm.
So that makes it a little bit challenging too. So we kind of like have to remember too that there might be parts of the job that you don't like, but then at
Mhm.
least the parts that you like make that you waking up happy and going to your job.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because there are always going to be parts of your job or people that you work with that you're not going to enjoy. So it won't be
Mm-hmm.
100%. Hopefully you can find something that's 65, 75%, right? That the
Yes.
good far outweighs the bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you jump into a job as a stepping stone. I need to learn this skill. I was listening to John Maxwell. So I'm an executive director with the John Maxwell team now, the Maxwell
Mm-hmm.
Leadership Certified team. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm an executive director. That's the highest level. And I was listening to John Maxwell, the number one leadership author, talk this morning. And he says, we always heard about the door of opportunity, thinking that
Mm-hmm.
when you open the door, bam, there it is. It's a great life. Everything's superb. He says, what I found is that I learned something, and then there's another door. And I open that door, and wow, that's good. I learned something, and then there's another door. So it was really the doors, plural, of opportunity. And I kept
Mm-hmm.
learning something at every job to get better, to get to the next job and the next job. Greater responsibility, greater pay, hopefully, more enjoyment. And so, exactly what you're talking about. So, sometimes a job can be a stepping stone to the next job. And we have to
Mm-hmm.
remember that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where, it's only 50-50. I'm suffering through this so I can learn this, so I can get to
Mm-hmm.
that, which is going to
Yeah.
be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a good
Indeed.
point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what are some major keys of Ikigai?
Yeah,
We
there's this.
like got a couple.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Ikigai is four concentric circles that overlap. The first one they always start on the far left is, what are you good at? Right? And most of us don't really spend a lot of time looking at what our skills are. We go used to be, so I'm old enough, we used to go to the
Mm-hmm.
newspaper to look at the want ads. Now you go to the internet to look at want ads, right? Or you go to websites to look at what jobs are
Let,
available. And
while you're talking, let me see if I can share because I look it up so I can share
okay,
it while you're talking about it.
that'd be great. Yeah. So we look at the jobs and we say, can I do that job? And we just do an assessment for that job. But we don't ask the question, do I want to do that job?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we don't even know if we can do that job because we haven't really thought what our skills are. Am I a good speaker? Am I a good writer? Am I a good leader? Am I a good communicator? Am I good at strategy? Am I good at data analysis? What are my real skills? So we just look at it and say, when I was in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, it was a contractor job, and people
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get to the contract on the nuclear site because they paid well and there was incredible security. And once you got in, you could go find a job. And I watched over 3 years, every 8 to 9, 10 months, people were changing jobs. So it's tough to get continuity. But they hadn't really looked at what they were good at. They just wanted a job and they would figure it
Mm-hmm.
out later. But the whole idea here is, what are you good at? My second day at Booz Allen Hamilton after I got out of the military, I sat down and I did an analysis. We were sitting in every quarter we would do a assessment of 25% of the employees on pay raises and promotions, and then what do they need to do for the next year to make themselves ready for the next. And I sat in the back room, started analyzing, right? Like 27 years in the Air Force, I did a lot of really good things. I had a lot of skills, but I didn't know how Booz Allen did, how they wrote proposals, how they did business development, how they did financial management, how they did
Mm-hmm.
reporting. There was a whole bunch of things I didn't understand from the inside. I wasn't good at that. Those were things that were on now my to-do list to get good at. So I knew what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. I talked about that in DC a couple weeks after that to some senior leaders, and they said, "How did you know how to do that?" I was like, "Wow!" So there's not a lot of people in that room that day that had ever really sat down and assessed their skills. So I think the first places we start is, what are you good at? You do that self-assessment. Could come with personality assessments. It could be a lot of different ways that we can use to figure out what we're good at. But then you go to the top one. What do you love? And it goes back to that piece about the looking at the jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not what do I want to do? I'm sorry, not what can I do, but what do I want to do? When I was getting ready to leave the military, I was at a conference and I was doing interviews with companies. And there was a lot of companies looking for people for design of facilities and facility maintenance and construction. My only interest since the fifth grade, as I said in the beginning, was environmental. If I could work to clean up the water, to clean up the soil, to clean up the air, that's what I wanted to do. Well, those are the lowest paying of the engineering jobs. So people
Mm-hmm.
kept telling me, you got to go over here and do the design and do the sales and stuff. I said, but I'm not going to love that work. I'm not even going to like that work. I've done it before. I did good at it, but that's not where I want to spend the next 20 years of my life. And I'll take the lower pay. So it's important that we think about the emotions of what we want to do. Now, maybe other people will make their life worth living is all about the money and all about the significance of that piece. And the loving the work doesn't have to be that way. But for this
Mm-hmm.
gentleman who came up with this model, it was the best way to find a life worth living is you're good at it and you love it, right? And then there's the external pieces, the far right. It's what the world needs. If you're a Dave Ramsey fan, he always talks about, getting a degree, a bachelor's degree in left-hand German puppetry.
Mm-hmm.
How many places in the world need left-handed German puppetry?
Uh-huh.
Maybe,
Exactly.
maybe teaching it, right, to the people who
Mm-hmm.
get the degree. I don't know, but the world doesn't need it. So do find something that the world needs. You may end up finding that the thing you're good at and love is not something the world needs. So maybe that's a
Mm-hmm.
volunteer opportunity. Maybe that's a hobby. Maybe you do it in a different way. So you have to settle for something a little bit less. Number two choices. But it's important that we think about, what does the world need? Certainly right now, information
Mm-hmm.
technology, data analysis,
Yeah.
um, so many of those things are hot. And well, I say that there's a lot of people who just got laid off in technology, but it's starting to come back around. So we'll see how that comes
Mm-hmm.
out in the next year or two. But it's been really hot.
Yeah.
Um, right now, some other things are taking its place. So figure out what that trend is and figure out what the world needs. And the last
Mm-hmm.
one is, what will people pay you for? The bottom circle. So you start looking at, what is it that I can get paid for? I remember I was the board chair for the Red Cross here in San Antonio. And there was a young lady with a master's degree. She was in, they called it development, which was fundraising. And
Mm-hmm.
she was good at it, but she was making peanuts, basically, for a gal who had a master's degree. She could not live on what she was making with a master's degree.
No.
So the last thing she wanted to do was go, with her degree, be a wedding consultant. Work with the
Mm-hmm.
bridezillas, right? We've all heard about the tough brides in a wedding, tough to work with. She says, "I'll do
Mm-hmm.
that, and I can make 2 to 3 times the amount of money. I'll suffer through it. I just got
Mm-hmm.
to have more money." So that was what people would pay for, but they wouldn't pay for her to be that development fundraising person to
Mm-hmm.
what really were her skills. So what is it that companies will pay for? What will
Mm-hmm.
government pay for? So you
Yeah.
take all four of those circles, and to make it simple, the overlap of the four circles is that Ikigai. It's the center. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
primo job that you can get, right? You're good at it. You love it. The world needs it, and they'll pay you
Mm-hmm.
for it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a dream position, right? Most positions we
Correct.
get are most positions we
Mm-hmm.
get are not going to be in the center. And that's where they look at the other intersections, right? If you're good at it and you love it, it's probably a passion area. If you love it and the world needs it, it's probably your mission. If you need it, the world needs it, and the people will pay for it, it's probably a vocation. And if you're good at it and the world will pay for it,
That's a
not that they necessarily
profession.
need it, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
profession.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's interesting to see how they've worked that out, and it really makes a lot of sense, the different overlapping circles of how you can try to find that different piece that's important to you.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
that was a long discussion of it, but that's the basics, I think, of what's
Yeah.
made me think about it.
Yeah. And it's important as well, I think, to realize that it's not always that you can get it one, two, three. You have to put some work in it. You have to put some energy, because not everybody can find one time what they love to do, or maybe they have to try two, three times before they can figure out what the world needs, especially if you thinking of being an entrepreneur. You're thinking like you said, the left hand side puppet master.
Yeah.
You love that, but like you said, the world don't need it. But maybe, like you said, you can still be a puppet master, but in a
Hmm.
different way.
Hmm.
So we as well have to be kind of like open minded too, to find like another way. If what we really love to do, we can manage to achieve the way we would want to achieve it.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think what you just said is so important. We need to constantly be thinking about where we want to end up. What's my 5-year plan? What's my 10-year plan? Because you never know when things are going to change. Look at what's
Mm-hmm.
happened in the last 12 months. So many technology companies have laid off a lot of people. In fact, our big
Yeah.
insurance company here that works with military just laid off a whole bunch of people here in the last couple of weeks. I mean, to the tune of
Mm-hmm.
thousands of people. So you
Mm-hmm.
never know when that's going to get forced upon you. So if you're not thinking into what you want to do, thinking into what skills I need to develop, what
Mm-hmm.
network I need to have to get that kind of job, you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
sitting in a spot where you're starting from ground zero without a job.
Yeah.
But if you can be working on those things over time, it makes that transition so much quicker. We've probably all heard of stories where I lost the job on Friday and I put it out word to my network, and by Monday morning I had a new job.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
what a dream, right? When I work with
Mm-hmm.
military, we tell them you need to be thinking 2 years out and taking, because it takes that long to work through
Mm-hmm.
Ikigai or whatever you use to figure that piece out of what do I really want to do, build the network,
Mm-hmm.
get my resume in the right fashion, get my LinkedIn in the right fashion so that I can start applying. But
Yeah.
some people try to do it in 60 days, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's a terrible situation. Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine. And like to continue on what you said about Friday you were laid off and on Monday you got another job. Like you mentioned, you had a community that you could have put out your feelers out there for you to be able to find another job, and you had different skills. You wasn't only banking on one type of skill,
Mhm.
which is actually I find something that we have to really keep in mind nowadays because of everything. You have to have, like they say, eggs in multiple basket and not only in one, and have different type of skills for just in case if anything you are
That's right.
able to do something different.
That's right. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe in that case, you have to take something that it's not your top love. Maybe it's your number 3 or 4 or 5 thing that you love to do, but it's
Mm-hmm.
that what pays the bills until the economy recovers and I can get back into what I really want.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a stepping stone.
Yeah,
But then
exactly.
again, if you haven't done that before, you don't know if you're going to love it or not. So go back to the NCO in Germany perspective, right? Go out with an open mind. I get
Mm-hmm.
to do this for a time. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to figure out if I really love it or not,
Mm-hmm.
and give it the best try you can. Don't don't
Yeah.
don't let the Sunday scaries and the negative attitude take over your life. This is not a
Yeah.
fun way to live. So again,
No.
mental health and therapy.
Yeah, correct. And in a case like that, what for advice would you give a person like that? Oh, tips.
Um, I definitely would. I always come back to mentor and coach,
Mm-hmm.
because we get locked into our attitude. We start to see that, oh, I just got laid off. It was a beautiful job. I loved it. The company didn't like me, and we start to
Mm-hmm.
get that negative attitude. And the negative attitude starts to compound itself, and then pretty soon we're mad at the company. And then we get mad at the entire world, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody starts to pay the price. Um, at that point, it's tough to get yourself out of it. And I think that's a part of the suicide piece, right? People start going down into the dark place and into the hole, and they can't get themselves out of it. The human mind is there to protect us. And when we got laid off from a great job, we start to criticize ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon we're so wrapped into this negative attitude we can't get ourselves out. So by having a coach or a mentor or even a friend, being able to talk to you and shake you up a little bit and say, "Hey, Don, this is not the way you want to be. This is not
Mm-hmm.
helping you." But
Yeah.
somebody like a therapist or a coach can help you with some different tools to help you
Mm-hmm.
recognize, and they ask questions and get you thinking. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I had a coach one time. He used to use the gremlin on the shoulder, and the
Mm-hmm.
gremlin on the shoulder is talking into your ear and saying, "Wow, you're not going to be able to do that job." And then when you start to say, "Well, why can't I do that job? Don't I have those skills? I'm a good speaker. I'm a good writer. I know data analysis. Those are the skills for the job." And
Mm-hmm.
the gremlin says, "But you've never done those before." "Well, yeah, I haven't done those things, but I've done other things. I think I can learn that, right?"
Yeah.
But without the coach basically trying to ask those questions back to the gremlin and say, "Why can't I do that job?" But that's
Mm-hmm.
not the way our human mind works. Our
Mm.
human mind will just concentrate on the negative.
Yeah.
So it's I think the therapist and the coach who are
Mm-hmm.
really getting you to think into things and
Yeah.
articulate those are so important.
Mm-hmm. And it's easier to focus on the negative than trying to find the positive in things, because, like you said,
Mhm.
our mind is so conditioned that it's a challenge to, even if we seeing the positive or we want to be thinking the positive, there's always a little negative slipping in it.
Yep. Yeah. Which is why a good group of 4 to 5 people around you who recognize when things change. When
Mm-hmm.
my dad died in 2006. I had a really good friend who worked for me. We had gotten to be friends, and he kind of came over and said, "Hey, I'm concerned about you. You don't seem to be letting the emotions of the situation out.
Yeah.
Are you blocking it? I mean, you need to kind of let it happen and
Mm-hmm.
remember your dad and let the grief come out." And uh, and then finally, after about a couple days later, when I started thinking about it, it came out one morning, and it was good. It was good for me
Mm-hmm.
to go through it. But I was
Yeah.
thinking about from a manly perspective, I can't cry. I can't let that kind of thing bother me, right? I
Yeah.
just gotta bury it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, my dad went through Korea in the 50s. He went through almost every major battle in Korea, and he should have been probably killed a number of times. I could talk all kinds of stories, but and I only
Mm-hmm.
know so much of the stories that he probably had. But
Yeah.
he buried it, and for about 50 years he buried it. And he went to his reunion with his company,
Mm-hmm.
the battalion, I guess it was the military unit he was with. I don't remember what level, but it was a number of people that were still alive. And
Mm-hmm.
he started then to have nightmares and all kinds of stuff. So everything he had suppressed for 50 years started coming out, and it was dealing with him. And he had to go see somebody because it was getting
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming. But I wonder
Yeah.
if he would have dealt with it back in the 50s, if that would have been much easier through the process than it was 50 years later. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the answer is yes. I'm not an expert in that, but which goes back to the saying I live by: deal with it now because it's good, or it's going to deal with you later.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Indeed. Yeah. It's recommendable to indeed deal with it at the moment, then leave it not dealing with it, leave it consume you, and like they used to like to use the English word fester and everything, and
Yeah,
then it becomes bigger than maybe it should have been, and then it has all kind of consequences. Yes.
yeah,
And it does have a it has a positive effect too when you're dealing with it, because then your way of handling with challenges or dealing with daily life will be different than when you're walking around with, let me call them, all the traumas. So
yeah. So I use that idea with DISC because the S personality in DISC is steady and
mm-hmm.
stable, but it's 67% of the population. And one of the major features is they resist conflict. So that idea, when somebody walks by and makes a comment and they don't like it, they just sit
Mm-hmm.
there quietly and stew about it versus going up and saying, "Hey, you just walked by and made a comment. I don't appreciate that. That didn't feel
Yeah.
right. I'd appreciate it if you didn't say
Mm-hmm.
that." But they won't do that. And therefore, the people keep walking by and saying the same thing. And what happens is all of a sudden the person says, "I can't take this anymore." So I quit and I go somewhere else. But
Mm-hmm.
guess what? The same thing's going to happen there. And if you don't develop the skill to address conflict,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
So it's much better, like you said, don't let it fester. Take care of it now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that's why DISC I think is so important, is because if we don't know where to S, and I'm an S, I'm an SC, I'm a peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
So I know exactly what that is. I will sit back and stew about it and not have the conversation. But as soon as I understood I'm an S, now it's like, nope, I have to go do that. I have to go
Mm-hmm.
address this. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And the good thing is that we never too old to learn now. It's not
That's right.
because you reach a particular age. Every day we're learning something new.
I'm 63. I'll be 64 in 2 months, and I'm just the last 4 or 5 years I've really gotten into disc, and I'm learning so much every day. Really focus on reading and learning and podcasts. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you can learn till the day you die.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. So we have been talking about ikigai and everything that, well, not everything, but things that have to do with it. We're putting a
Mhm,
little bit experience in it. So before we kind of like closing it off,
mhm.
um, let me talk about the 10 rules of ikigai. Let me see if I can
Okay,
put it up.
okay.
Where is the challenge?
I think
Okay.
this is the first or second time I've done StreamYard, so this is a new experience for me.
Yes, and every time I need to remember how to share things so I
Yeah.
don't go and share the wrong things.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, when I was kind of like reading and researching about the Ikigai, I realized that they was talking about the 10 rules of Ikigai. And it's kind of like some of the things that we have been talking about it during tonight then. And I like it what it's saying. And it's things that we, majority of us trying to practice some of them.
Mhm.
And like the reconnect with the nature when you can
Mhm.
just go in the nature and take a time for yourself or even be with a group of friends there, connect with each other. So it's really interesting how they putting it, and
Mhm.
how the kind of like the world too have been, even when we're talking about the workplace, as in take it slow. Like you mentioned the example just now about, or at the beginning, about in the States, you're working till 6 or sometimes even till 10 o'clock because you feel like you have to finish that work, because otherwise you're not, you feel like you're not performing as good as the one next to you. So what do
Mhm.
you think about the 10 rules of Ikigai?
As I look at them, they all make a lot of sense just for good, healthy living, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exercising daily. I still get up at 4:50 every morning and try to go to the gym, and
Mm-hmm.
I lift weights 3 times a week. I just do aerobics 3 times a week. I still
Mm-hmm.
do my own yard work because I just enjoy the feeling of accomplishment, but it's also part of my exercise. It's part of my walking. I don't run anymore. I walk.
Mm-hmm.
So those are good for me, right? Smiling, as I talked about earlier, is just it
Mm-hmm.
creates that attitude.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these muscles right here, if you turn them up,
Mm-hmm.
can change
Yeah.
your whole perspective.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it goes back to the culture shock thing that I posted on LinkedIn today. So I
Mm-hmm.
think most of those, overeating. We went out the other night and I overate, and within an hour, man, I was falling asleep. And it's just not healthy for you, right? It becomes an
No.
overdose of carbs or sugar or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are all just really good um,
Yes.
keys to living a good, healthy life. And I like the one on the very top: live your ikigai, right? Find that
Mm-hmm.
find that job that feels worthwhile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. Well done. I enjoyed our time talking.
Same here.
And there is a lot more that we can talk about ikigai and how you can live a long and happy life, and what all you can do to kind of like have it good for yourself as well and your surroundings.
Mhm.
So I would like to thank you very much for the time that you were willing to spend with us. Before we close, do you have any closing remarks, tips, or?
I would just offer up if if somebody is in a job where they're not finding the satisfaction that we talked about, and they would like to have
Mhm.
a conversation with me, go to LinkedIn, and I'm the only Don with the middle initial L,
Mhm.
Gleason. There's like 65 Don and Donald Gleasons, but I'm the only one with
Mhm.
the L, so you can find me real quickly. Shoot me a connection note, and let's set the time together to talk. So the first 30 minutes conversation is just complimentary. Let's just see how I can help you and maybe connect you to some resources, give you some direction. And if you want to dig deeper, you see value in it, then we can go deeper. But
Mhm.
there's no pressure. But I think this is so important to people and their health, and their happiness, and happiness of those around you. I
Mhm.
when I was going through, I was a financial coach for Dave Ramsey, and they were saying that
Mhm.
50% of marriages end in divorce, and the biggest problem is money. Fights about money. So I
Yeah.
became a financial coach to try to help solve some of that problem.
Mhm.
Problem is I can't force them to communicate, and I found that more and more often is like, by the time it got to that point, they didn't want to communicate anymore. So I'm not a marriage counselor, but in
Mhm.
this case, I can directly help you find if you're at that point where you really want something different, we can spend some time to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, people, thank you for sharing your time with us. And like he said, if you're not feeling happy in the job that you're doing, you can always contact him, talk with him. And thank you for being present by our discussion hour where we were talking about Ikigai and what we can do to live a happy life. So
Yeah.
thank you again. Thank you, Don, for your time. I enjoyed it.
Same here.
And
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
you're welcome. You're welcome. And I will see everybody as soon as possible. Have a good evening.
Goodbye, all.